Ava Montgomery stared at the stack of medical bills, her vision blurring at the edges, not from exhaustion, though that was a constant companion, but from the unshed tears that pricked at her eyes. The fluorescent hum of her small apartment kitchen felt suffocating, each bill a tangible weight pressing down on her chest. Her younger sister Lily was everything to her. Lily, with her bright artistic spirit and a laugh that could chase away any shadow, was now a fragile, pale shadow herself, battling a rare, aggressive autoimmune disease. The experimental treatment, their last hope, came with a staggering price tag, one that far exceeded the combined might of Ava's nurse's salary and every penny of her meager savings. Desperation was a cold, creeping vine, slowly strangling her hope. She had worked triple shifts, sold everything of value, even considered selling her worn but beloved car, yet the insurmountable mountain of debt continued to grow, mocking her efforts. Every night, after Lily finally drifted into a fitful sleep, Ava would sit by her bedside, holding her frail hand, the rhythmic beep of the hospital monitors a constant, terrifying reminder of the ticking clock. Before we carry on, please hit the subscribe button to make my day and let me know where you are watching from in the comments. The phone call came on one such night, an anonymous number flashing on her screen, cutting through the sterile silence of the hospital ward. She almost ignored it, her mind preoccupied with Lily's spiking fever. But something, a gut instinct, made her answer. A smooth, deep voice, devoid of emotion, addressed her directly. "Ms. Ava Montgomery, my name is Elias Thorne, legal counsel for Mr. Grayson Blackwell. My client has been made aware of your sister, Lily Montgomery's, medical situation." Ava's heart hammered against her ribs. Grayson Blackwell. The name alone conjured images of towering skyscrapers, ruthlessly efficient boardrooms, and a fortune built on an empire of technology and real estate. He was a phantom figure in the news, rarely seen, often whispered about. A man whose wealth was as vast as his reputation for being utterly unapproachable. How do you know about Lily?" she managed, her voice trembling slightly, a defensive wall immediately rising. "Mr. Blackwell has extensive networks, Miss Montgomery," Thorne replied, his voice unnervingly calm. "He understands the gravity of your situation. He wishes to offer you a proposition." "A proposition?" Ava echoed, suspicion mingling with a flicker of desperate hope she refused to acknowledge. People like Grayson Blackwell didn't simply offer charity. "A mutually beneficial arrangement," Thorne clarified. "Mr. Blackwell is in need of a temporary spouse for a period of 1 year. In exchange for your agreement to this strictly transactional marriage, he will cover all medical expenses for your sister's treatment, including the experimental therapies, without limit." Ava's breath hitched. Marry a stranger? A calculating billionaire she knew nothing about? Her fiercely independent spirit recoiled. This was not a proposition. It was a surrender. But then she looked at Lily's fragile form, the faint rise and fall of her chest, the fourth drip, a lifeline. What was her pride against her sister's life? "A transactional marriage," she repeated, tasting the bitter metallic tang of the words. "What exactly does that entail?" Thorne proceeded to outline the terms with chilling precision. A public marriage, a carefully constructed facade of domestic bliss, attendance at high society events, a shared residence, but absolutely no emotional or physical intimacy. A legal agreement, ironclad and designed to protect both parties, with severe penalties for breach of contract. After 1 year, a quiet, amicable divorce. And in return, Lily's life, a guarantee of all necessary medical care. The choice, though agonizing, was no choice at all. I agree," Ava whispered, the words catching in her throat, the taste of defeat mingling with a desperate, overwhelming relief. Her heart felt like a hollow drum, beating a funeral march for her freedom. Their first meeting was set for a week later at Grayson Blackwell's penthouse, a towering structure of glass and steel that seemed to pierce the clouds. Ava arrived, feeling impossibly small and out of place in her best but still modest dress. The penthouse was a monument to wealth and austere taste. Minimalist decor, stark white walls adorned with abstract art, floor-to-ceiling windows offering a dizzying view of the city below. It felt less like a home and more like a high-security vault. Grayson Blackwell emerged from the shadows of a vast living area, a silhouette against the city lights. He was taller than she expected, with broad shoulders encased in a perfectly tailored suit. His hair, dark as midnight, was swept back from a sharp, intelligent face. His eyes, when they finally met hers, were the most striking feature, a piercing, icy blue, devoid of warmth, like glacial pools reflecting a winter sky. They held a profound emptiness, a haunted quality that sent a shiver down her spine. He didn't offer a hand, didn't smile. "Ms. Montgomery." His voice was deep, resonant, yet as cold and unyielding as his eyes. "Thank you for coming. Mr. Thorne has briefed you on the terms?" "Yes, Mr. Blackwell," Ava replied, trying to keep her voice steady, refusing to betray the fear and resentment churning within her. She felt like a specimen under a microscope, utterly exposed. "Good," he said, walking towards a sleek, dark wood table where two sets of elaborate documents lay open. "Then let's dispense with pleasantries. This is a business arrangement. Ms. Montgomery, nothing more. We will present a united front to the public. We will attend necessary functions. You will maintain appearances. In return, your sister receives the best medical care available. Is that clear?" "Perfectly," Ava stated, meeting his cold gaze, a spark of her inherent stubbornness igniting within her. She might be desperate, but she wouldn't be broken. She would endure this. For Lily. The wedding was a discreet, private affair, held in a small, ornate chapel on Blackwell's sprawling country estate, far from the prying eyes of the press, yet still lavish in its understated elegance. Ava wore a simple, elegant white gown that felt like a costume. Grayson, in a custom-made tuxedo, looked like a statue carved from ice. Their vows were hollow words, recited without conviction, witnessed by only Grayson's legal team and a few silent, unsmiling staff members. There was no exchange of rings, no kiss, no warmth whatsoever. As soon as the ceremony concluded, Grayson turned to her, his voice low. "The contract is now binding, Ms. Montgomery. My legal team will handle the first payment for Lily's treatment immediately. She will be transferred to the elite facilities in Switzerland this week." A wave of relief, so profound it made her knees weak, washed over Ava. Lily would live. That was all that mattered. But the joy was immediately tempered by the stark reality of her new life. She was now Mrs. Grayson Blackwell, a gilded cage her new home. The initial weeks were an exercise in controlled detachment. Ava moved into Grayson's penthouse, which was less a home and more an imposing art gallery, devoid of personal touches. They occupied separate wings, their paths rarely crossing unless a public event demanded it. Their interactions were stiff, formal, conducted through his stern, efficient assistant, Mrs. Davies, or his unreadable bodyguard, a silent giant named Rook. Grayson was a man of routines. Early morning workouts, long hours at his office, late-night calls. He moved through his world with a chilling precision, his emotions locked away behind an impenetrable facade. Ava, a nurse by nature, instinctively observed him. She saw the perpetual tension in his shoulders, the faint lines around his eyes that spoke of chronic fatigue, the way he flinched, almost imperceptibly, when a sudden loud noise erupted. He was a man haunted, she realized, not just cold. But by what? She saw glimpses of a profound sadness in the depths of his icy blue eyes, a flicker of something raw and vulnerable before he swiftly concealed it. Their first high society gala was a baptism by fire. Ava, dressed in a borrowed couture gown, felt like an imposter. The air crackled with hushed gossip and thinly veiled curiosity. Everyone wanted to know about Grayson Blackwell's mysterious new wife. He was a master of the polite half-smile, the distant nod, the perfectly vague answer that revealed nothing. He introduced her as, "My wife, Ava," his hand resting lightly, impersonally, on her lower back, a theatrical gesture for the cameras. She learned quickly to mimic his practiced detachment, to smile convincingly, to deflect probing questions about their whirlwind romance. Her acting skills, she discovered, were surprisingly good. One evening, after a particularly draining charity auction, they returned to the penthouse in a tense silence. Ava, exhausted, kicked off her heels, wincing at the ache in her feet. Grayson, loosening his tie, noticed. "You're not accustomed to this," he stated, his voice flat. It wasn't a question, merely an observation. "No," she admitted, rubbing her aching arches. "My life before this involved far more comfortable shoes and far more meaningful conversations." A flicker, a ghost of a reaction, crossed his face. "Meaningful?" he scoffed softly. "There is little meaning in polite society, Ms. Montgomery. Only transactions." "Perhaps," Ava countered, a spark of defiance igniting. "But at least in my world, the transactions involve saving lives, not just accumulating wealth." The words hung in the air, audacious, challenging. Grayson's eyes, usually so guarded, held hers for a long moment. She expected anger, a sharp retort. Instead, a profound weariness settled over his features. He turned away, walking to the panoramic window, his back to her. "Saving lives, Miss Montgomery," he murmured, his voice surprisingly low, almost a whisper, "is a futile endeavor." The bitterness in his tone was unmistakable, raw and unfiltered. It was the first time she had heard such genuine emotion from him. It confirmed her suspicion. He was haunted. But by what tragedy could such a powerful man be so deeply scarred? She wanted to ask, to push, but the invisible wall between them, though momentarily thinned, was still formidable. As weeks turned into a month, a fragile, unspoken routine settled between them. Lily's treatments in Switzerland were progressing well, a constant source of relief and purpose for Ava. She received daily updates from the medical team, saw photos of Lily, looking stronger, regaining some of her youthful sparkle. This, she reminded herself, was why she was here. Ava, trying to find some semblance of normalcy, began to explore the vast penthouse. She discovered a hidden library, filled with ancient, leather-bound books and modern first editions, a surprising warmth in the otherwise sterile environment. She found herself drawn to it, spending hours lost in stories, a temporary escape from her gilded cage. One afternoon, she found Grayson there, seated in a worn armchair, a rare book in his hands, his guard momentarily down. He looked less like a billionaire and more like a lost boy, his face softened by the glow of the reading lamp. He looked up, startled by her presence, his usual mask snapping back into place. "Ms. Montgomery, I wasn't aware you frequented this room." "I enjoy reading," she replied simply, gesturing to the shelves. "It's a pleasant refuge." She noticed the book he held was a rare first edition of a collection of tragic poetry. "You read poetry?" she asked, surprised. "Sometimes," he admitted, his voice curt. He closed the book, placing it carefully on a side table. "It's a distraction." Their conversations, though still infrequent and formal, slowly began to shift, inch by painstaking inch, from purely logistical matters to brief, almost accidental exchanges about art, literature, world events. Ava, armed with her nurse's keen observation skills and her innate empathy, started piecing together fragments of his past. She noticed his aversion to certain topics, particularly anything related to family or personal loss. His intense focus on work, his relentless pursuit of new ventures, seemed less about ambition and more about a desperate need for distraction, a way to fill an unbearable void. One evening, a prominent politician, a family friend of Grayson's, made an offhand comment at a social event about the terrible accident that changed everything for Grayson. Ava caught the fleeting expression of pain on Grayson's face, swiftly masked, and knew it was the key. Later that night, unable to sleep, she cautiously broached the subject. "I heard a comment tonight about an accident. It seemed to affect you deeply." Grayson, sipping a glass of amber liquid in his study, stiffened. He stared into the swirling contents of his glass, his voice low, gravelly. "It's none of your concern, Miss Montgomery. Our agreement does not extend to probing personal traumas." "Perhaps not directly," Ava conceded. "But understanding what haunts you might help me fulfill my role more convincingly. People talk, they look for weaknesses, and your grief, Mr. Blackwell, is a profound one. It's visible, even through your careful facade." He turned to her then, his eyes blazing with a mixture of anger and raw vulnerability. "My grief, as you call it, is a private matter. It defines me. It is not for public consumption, and certainly not for your convenient analysis." He paused, his gaze softening almost imperceptibly, a flicker of something lost in their depths. "My sister. She was everything. A terrible accident. My fault." The words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken pain. His sister. A terrible accident. His fault. Ava felt a wave of profound empathy wash over her. She knew about loss, about the crushing weight of responsibility, about the desperate desire to protect a sibling. The wall around him, momentarily breached, allowed a glimpse into the vast landscape of his sorrow. "I understand," Ava said softly, her voice infused with genuine compassion. "I understand what it feels like to live with that kind of responsibility, that kind of fear for a sister you adore, to feel like you failed them. But it's rarely one person's fault, Grayson. Accidents, they just happen." She used his first name for the first time, instinctively, a quiet intimacy that surprised them both. He flinched at the sound of his name, a slight tremor passing through him. He said nothing more, retreating behind his usual impenetrable facade. But the brief exchange had irrevocably altered something between them. A tiny crack had appeared in the armor he wore so diligently. Days later, a delicate package arrived for Ava. Inside, a small, exquisitely carved wooden bird, a hummingbird, its wings poised for flight. A note, in an elegant, almost archaic script, accompanied it. "For your courage, Ms. Montgomery, from a fellow survivor of the storm, GB." Ava held the bird, her fingers tracing its smooth, cool surface. It was a gesture of profound, unexpected intimacy, a silent acknowledgement of the shared space of their grief, a recognition of her understanding. As the months passed, their public appearances became less of a performance and more of a strange, unspoken ritual. They learned each other's rhythms, their subtle cues. Ava noticed the slight tremor in his hand when he was truly stressed, the way he would absently trace patterns on tablecloths when lost in thought. Grayson, in turn, began to anticipate her needs, a quiet, almost imperceptible attentiveness. He'd ensure her favorite herbal tea was ready after a late night, or subtly guide her away from overly intrusive journalists. He never spoke about the hummingbird, but she saw his gaze linger on it when she placed it on her bedside table. Lily's recovery in Switzerland was nothing short of miraculous. The experimental treatment, funded by Grayson's immense wealth, was working. Lily was regaining her strength, her laughter returning, brighter and clearer than ever. Ava spoke to her every day, her heart swelling with gratitude and a bittersweet ache. She was saving her sister, but at what cost to herself? Her life, once simple and straightforward, was now intertwined with a man she barely knew, a man who evoked a confusing mix of resentment, pity, and a burgeoning, unsettling curiosity. One rainy afternoon, Ava was in the library, engrossed in a particularly dense historical biography. Grayson entered, shedding his coat, the rain still clinging to his dark hair. He paused, looking at her, a rare, unhurried moment. "You spend a lot of time here," he observed, his voice softer than usual. "It's one of the few places in this penthouse that feels like a home," she replied without thinking, then immediately regretted the bluntness. He didn't react with anger. Instead, a weary sigh escaped him. It was never meant to be a home. It was built as a fortress, after the accident. He walked over to a glass cabinet, his fingers tracing the outline of a framed photograph, turned away from view. He hesitated, then slowly turned it around. It was a faded photograph of a young girl, no older than Lily, with bright, mischievous eyes and a wide, gap-toothed smile. She was sitting on a sailboat, her dark hair streaming in the wind, a beacon of pure joy. Her resemblance to Grayson was striking. "My sister, Charlotte," he said, his voice barely audible, thick with a grief so profound it felt like a physical presence in the room. "She loved to sail. It was her passion. And I loved to indulge her. I bought her that boat. Despite my father's warnings about the unpredictability of the sea, I was on board with her that day. The storm came out of nowhere. I tried to save her, but I wasn't strong enough. I failed her. She was swept overboard. Her body never recovered." His voice broke on the last words, raw and unadorned. Ava felt her heart ache for him. The carefully constructed facade had finally crumbled, revealing the raw, bleeding wound beneath. "Oh, Grayson," she whispered, moving instinctively towards him, her hand reaching out, hesitantly, to touch his arm. "I am so sorry. That's an unimaginable pain." He flinched at her touch, but didn't pull away. His eyes, swimming with unshed tears, finally met hers, full of a vulnerability she hadn't dared to hope for. "I live with it every day, Ava. The guilt is a constant companion. It built these walls, this coldness you observe. It made me believe that anything I loved would be taken from me. So I stopped loving. I stopped feeling. It was easier that way." "But it's not living, Grayson," Ava said gently, her voice full of genuine empathy. "It's merely existing. And Charlotte wouldn't want that for you. She wouldn't want you to carry that burden alone." She felt an overwhelming urge to comfort him, to bridge the vast chasm of his grief. For the first time since she had known him, Grayson Blackwell, the calculating billionaire, wept, silent, tearing sobs that shook his powerful frame. Ava, forgetting their contract, their transactional marriage, instinctively pulled him into her arms, holding him, letting him lean on her, offering the silent comfort she knew so well from her years as a nurse, a balm for the soul. He clung to her, his face buried in her shoulder, the raw, unfiltered grief a stark contrast to his usual composure. In that moment, the barriers dissolved, and for the first time, she saw him not as a cold, distant stranger, but as a deeply wounded man, utterly human. The intimacy of that moment, born of shared vulnerability and profound empathy, irrevocably changed their dynamic. The contract, a cold, legal document, began to feel like a distant memory, replaced by a nascent, fragile connection. Their conversations became more personal, less guarded. He began to confide in her, slowly, hesitantly, about his work, about the immense pressure he felt, about the solitude that had defined his life since Charlotte's death. Ava, in turn, spoke of her passion for nursing, her dreams for Lily's future, the simple joys she found in helping others. He began to observe her with a new intensity, a quiet curiosity that went beyond superficial appearances. He saw her kindness, her unwavering dedication to Lily, her quiet strength. He noticed the way she lit up when talking about her patients, the way her eyes crinkled when she truly smiled. He started bringing her small, thoughtful gifts. A rare edition of a book she mentioned, a single, perfectly bloomed rose, a delicate drawing of a hummingbird from a master artist, a silent acknowledgement of the earlier, symbolic gift. These gestures, small yet significant, spoke volumes of his growing attentiveness, his burgeoning appreciation for the woman she truly was. One evening, at a formal dinner, Grayson surprised her by subtly guiding her into a waltz. He was an unexpectedly graceful dancer, his hand firm and warm on her back. As they moved across the polished floor, bathed in the soft glow of chandeliers, their eyes met. For the first time, she saw something other than sorrow or detachment in his icy blue gaze. A flicker of warmth, a hesitant admiration, a question, and in that moment, Ava felt a bewildering, dangerous pull towards him. A tremor of emotion she hadn't anticipated, a feeling that defied all logic and the strictures of their contract. He was no longer just the billionaire stranger. He was Grayson, a man wounded, complex, and unexpectedly captivating. Just as their fragile connection began to deepen, a shadow from Grayson's past reappeared, threatening to tear them apart. A woman, elegant and impeccably dressed, with sharp, calculating eyes and a predatory smile, confronted them at a high-profile art exhibition. "Grayson, darling," she purred, her voice dripping with artificial sweetness. "I see you've found yourself a new accessory. I'm surprised you haven't learned your lesson from the last one." She looked at Ava with undisguised disdain. Grayson's face, usually so composed, instantly hardened, a mask of cold fury descending upon him. "Miranda," he said, his voice clipped, laced with an unfamiliar venom. "You're out of line." Miranda merely laughed, a brittle, unpleasant sound. "Am I? Or are you simply afraid your little nurse here will discover the truth about your past? About how you truly got your wealth? About the other women you've used and discarded?" She flung the accusations like poisoned darts, her eyes gleaming with malice. Ava felt a cold dread seep into her veins. Other women? Used and discarded. This was a side of Grayson she had never seen, a past he had never mentioned. She looked at Grayson, searching his eyes for an explanation, but his gaze was fixed on Miranda, filled with a raw, almost desperate anger. "This is not the time or place, Miranda," Grayson gritted out, his hand tightening on Ava's arm, a possessive, almost protective grip. "Leave us." "Oh, but it is, Grayson," Miranda cooed, leaning closer, her voice dropping to a theatrical whisper meant to carry. "Wouldn't she like to know about the Blackwell Foundation, about its dark origins? About the woman you really loved, the one you destroyed to build your empire?" Grayson's face went white. He grabbed Miranda's arm, his grip surprisingly forceful, pulling her away from Ava, muttering something low and furious she couldn't quite catch. He ushered her roughly towards an exit, his composure utterly shattered. When he returned to Ava, his face was pale, his eyes distant, clouded by a storm of inner turmoil. He avoided her gaze, his usual practiced detachment replaced by a visible unease. "Ava," he said, his voice strained, "we need to leave. Now." Back at the penthouse, the silence was suffocating. Ava's mind reeled with Miranda's accusations, her words echoing like a sinister prophecy. The Blackwell Foundation, the woman he really loved, the one he destroyed. His empire built on destruction. What hidden depths of darkness lay beneath his carefully constructed persona? The trust, so painstakingly built, threatened to crumble. "Who was that?" Ava finally asked, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. And what was she talking about? What lesson? What other women? What dark origins? Grayson walked to the panoramic window, his back to her, just as he had done on that first night he allowed a glimpse of his grief. He stood there for a long time, the city lights shimmering behind him, a distant, indifferent backdrop to his internal struggle. The air in the penthouse crackled with unspoken secrets, a heavy weight pressing down on Ava. She could feel his hesitation, the immense effort it took for him to finally speak, as if the words themselves were physically painful. "Miranda Hayes," he began, his voice low, gravelly, "is a relic of a past I tried to bury, a past deeply intertwined with my family's history and the foundation of the Blackwell Empire." He paused, taking a ragged breath. "She was my fiancée years ago, before everything." Ava felt a jolt. His fiancée. He had loved someone else, deeply enough to propose. The thought sent an unexpected pang through her, a strange mix of curiosity and something akin to jealousy. But Miranda's words hinted at something far darker than a broken engagement. She mentioned the Blackwell Foundation, Ava pressed gently, and destroying someone. What did she mean? Grayson turned, his eyes still distant, haunted. The Blackwell Foundation was established by my grandfather. It was his brainchild, meant to consolidate our family's philanthropic endeavors. But its initial funding, its very foundation, came from ethically dubious sources. My grandfather was a ruthless man, driven by an insatiable hunger for power and wealth. He built the initial fortune through exploitative labor practices in developing countries and less than scrupulous land acquisitions. My father tried to clean it up, to steer the company towards more ethical practices, but the stain remained, a deep, pervasive rot. "And the woman you destroyed?" Ava asked, her voice barely a whisper, dread creeping into her heart. Grayson closed his eyes for a moment, a spasm of pain crossing his face. "My first love, apart from Charlotte. Her name was Evelyn. She was an investigative journalist, fiercely principled, incredibly intelligent. She was working on a story about unethical corporate practices, about the very kind of exploitation my grandfather engaged in. She was close to exposing the true, dark origins of the Blackwell fortune, the true extent of his ruthlessness. My father, who was still trying to escape the shadow of his own father, begged me to intervene, to protect the family name, to prevent a scandal that would have utterly destroyed us." He opened his eyes, their blue depths filled with a terrible self-loathing. "I was young, arrogant, desperate to prove myself worthy of the family name, blinded by loyalty and a twisted sense of duty. I used my influence, my connections. I fabricated evidence, planted false leads, discredited her sources. I leaked information that painted her as reckless, irresponsible, willing to compromise journalistic integrity for a sensational story. I ruined her career, her reputation. I destroyed her." His voice dropped to a pained whisper. "She was everything." "She vanished, completely. I never saw her again. It was a mistake I have lived with every single day, a betrayal that haunts my waking hours and my dreams." Ava stared at him, reeling. This was a different kind of darkness, a moral failing that cut deeper than any personal loss. He had actively, deliberately destroyed someone's life, not through accident, but through a cold, calculated campaign of sabotage. The man she was beginning to feel for, the one who wept for his lost sister, was also capable of such profound cruelty. You ruined her life?" she asked, her voice filled with a stunned disbelief. "To protect the Blackwell name, to save the empire from utter collapse," he confirmed, his voice devoid of self-pity, only profound regret. "My father argued it was the only way, to preserve the family. It was a choice between my family's future and Evelyn's career. And I chose my family. It was the darkest decision of my life, one that stripped me of any sense of honor or moral compass. It's why I've kept everyone at arm's length, why I believed I was unworthy of love, of happiness, why I built these walls. I believed I deserved to be alone, to suffer the consequences of my actions in solitude. The confession hung heavy in the air, a devastating revelation. Ava understood the guilt that drove him, the shame that had built his fortress of solitude. But understanding didn't immediately equate to forgiveness. The image of the independent journalist, her life shattered by his deliberate actions, clashed violently with the vulnerable man who had cried in her arms. Could she trust a man capable of such calculated destruction, even if it wasn't his past? Could she truly give her heart to someone with such a profound stain on his conscience? Miranda, he continued, anticipating her next question, was Evelyn's cousin. She knew parts of the story, twisted and exaggerated for her own malicious pleasure. She resented me, always, for breaking her heart and for choosing the family legacy over her. She would have used it to destroy me, to publicly expose my shame, given the chance. Ava remained silent, her mind racing, processing the enormity of his confession. This was not the simple, clean deal she had signed up for. This was a man burdened by monstrous guilt, a man who had made a terrible choice, with devastating consequences. I tried to find Evelyn years later, he said, his voice tinged with a desperate regret. To apologize, to make amends, to offer whatever restitution I could. But she vanished, completely, as if swallowed by the earth. I never could locate her. It's one of my greatest regrets, a ghost that haunts me more than any other. His sincerity was undeniable, the raw pain in his eyes heartbreaking. He was not making excuses. He was simply laying bare his soul, revealing the profound depths of his self-loathing. Ava felt a complex web of emotions entangle her. Anger at his past actions, pity for his torment, and a strange, persistent pull towards the wounded man beneath the billionaire facade. "What do you want from me, Ava?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper, his gaze pleading. "I understand if you want to end this. Our contract, I will still ensure Lily's treatment is fully paid. You are free to go." The thought of walking away, of reclaiming her simple life, was tempting. She had fulfilled her end of the bargain. Lily was safe. But looking at Grayson, truly looking at him, she saw not just the man who had destroyed a life, but the boy who had lost his sister, the man who was desperately trying to atone, who was finally opening his heart, however broken it was. And somewhere, deep in her own heart, a fragile seed of something profound had begun to sprout, an unexpected connection she couldn't deny. "No," Ava said, her voice firm, surprising even herself. "I won't leave, not yet. But I need to know, Grayson, how have you tried to atone? How have you tried to make things right, beyond just looking for Evelyn?" He looked at her, a flicker of something akin to hope, fragile yet potent, in his eyes. "The Blackwell Foundation. I restructured it entirely. I severed all ties to the ethically dubious sources of funding. I dedicated its resources to environmental conservation, to fair labor practices in developing nations, to supporting independent journalism that holds power accountable. Every cent I earn now, every new venture, is meticulously vetted for ethical implications. It's cow, my pedants, Ava, my attempt to redeem the family name, to create a legacy of healing where there was once one of harm. It's not enough, I know, but it's all I have." Ava listened, her heart softening. His actions, a quiet, relentless pursuit of ethical business and genuine philanthropy, spoke louder than any words. He wasn't just expressing remorse, he was actively rebuilding, attempting to right the wrongs of his past and his family's past with every fiber of his being. He was a deeply flawed man, but he was striving for redemption. And that, she realized, was a profound act of courage. "Okay," she said, stepping closer, reaching out to take his hand. His fingers, usually so cold, were warm in hers. "Okay, Grayson, we stay. But this isn't just about a contract anymore. It's about us, and we figure this out, together." A profound relief washed over his features, followed by a hesitant, almost fragile smile, the first genuine one she had ever seen from him. "Thank you, Ava," he murmured, his voice thick with emotion. "Thank you for seeing past my darkness." From that moment, their marriage, once a cold transaction, began to transform into something real, something deeply meaningful. They started spending more time together, simply being in each other's presence, sharing quiet meals, walks in the vast gardens of the estate, late-night conversations in the library. He began to learn about her simple joys, her love for baking, her passion for gardening, her quiet moments of meditation. She taught him to laugh more, to find solace in simple pleasures, to shed the heavy mantle of his guilt, if only for a few moments. He, in turn, opened her eyes to the world of high art, of classical music, of the subtle power of philanthropy done right. He showed her that wealth, in the right hands, could be a force for immense good. Their public appearances became less of a performance and more of a genuine partnership. The society pages noted the change, the subtle shift in Grayson Blackwell, the softening of his icy demeanor, the genuine affection in his gaze when he looked at his wife. Whispers of a true love story began to replace the initial cynical gossip. But even as their bond deepened, the shadow of Evelyn, the journalist, lingered. Ava understood his guilt, but a part of her still longed for true closure for the woman whose life he had destroyed. She began her own discreet inquiries, utilizing what she had learned from Marcus about tracing vanished people, drawing on her own determination and resourcefulness. She knew it was a long shot, but she felt a strange, almost spiritual obligation to Evelyn. She spent weeks poring over old newspaper archives, online forums for investigative journalists, and even reaching out to a network of nurses who sometimes encountered people living off the grid. It was a needle in a haystack, but Ava was relentless. Her quiet dedication often went unnoticed by Grayson as she pursued this new personal quest during the hours he was at his office. Then, a breakthrough. A small, almost forgotten online community forum for independent journalists featured a post from years ago, a desperate plea for information about a brilliant young journalist named Evelyn Thorne, who mysteriously vanished after attempting to expose a major corporate scandal. The name Thorne, Alaric Thorne, the artist, sparked a fleeting, bizarre recognition. Ava dismissed it as coincidence. The post included a faded photograph, and Ava's breath caught. It was Evelyn, and beneath the surface, a striking, undeniable resemblance to Isabel Vance, the woman in the griever, and to Amelia. Evelyn Thorne. Thorne. Alaric Thorne. Could it be? A chilling, impossible connection began to form in her mind. Evelyn Thorne. Alaric Thorne. Was Evelyn a descendant of Alaric Thorne, the artist who loved Isabel Vance? And if so, did that mean the Vance family's reach extended far beyond just Grayson's family, into Evelyn's own lineage, potentially setting her up for destruction simply for her connection to the artist's legacy? The thought was insane, yet compelled her. She shared her findings and her burgeoning, wild theory with Marcus. He was skeptical, of course, but the uncanny nature of the previous Vance-Amelia connection made him listen. He began to investigate the Thorne lineage, researching Alaric Thorne's descendants, however elusive they might be. A week later, Marcus called, his voice laced with shock. "Ava, you won't believe this. Alaric Thorne, the artist, did have a direct descendant. A small, obscure branch of the family, focused on academia and research. And one of them, a fiercely independent woman named Evelyn Thorne, became an investigative journalist. Her great-grandmother was Alaric's daughter. And what's more, there were whispers in her family about a connection to a historical scandal involving the Vance family. She was investigating not just general corporate malfeasance, but specifically the Blackwell-Vance connection, a hidden alliance between the two families in earlier, less savory dealings, a secret partnership that predated Grayson's grandfather. She was trying to expose that entire intertwined, corrupt history, not just the Blackwells. And it was that investigation that led to her downfall. Her family always believed she was silenced, not just discredited, by powerful forces. Ava's blood ran cold. The web was far more intricate, far more insidious than even Grayson knew. Evelyn's investigation wasn't just about Blackwell. It was about the original, deeply intertwined corruption of both the Blackwell and Vance fortunes, a partnership that dated back to the 19th century, a continuation of the same secrecy that had led to Isabel's death. This meant that Evelyn was a direct descendant of the man who painted the griever, who loved Isabel. Her pursuit of the truth was not just journalistic integrity, but a generational quest for justice, driven by an ancestral whisper. This was a truth Grayson needed to hear, a piece of his family's dark puzzle that he was still missing. She confronted him that evening, laying out the chain. New findings, her voice firm, unwavering. She showed him the forum post, the faint resemblance between Evelyn, Isabel, and Amelia. Grayson, it wasn't just you. It was Evelyn's own ancestry that made her a target. Her connection to Alaric Thorne, her investigation into the intertwined corruption of the Blackwell and Vance families. It all made her a threat that powerful people, perhaps even elements within your own family who knew about the deeper, older connections, felt they needed to eliminate. She wasn't just a random journalist. She was a descendant of the very man who witnessed Isabel's sorrow and disappearance. Grayson listened, his face pale, his eyes wide with horror and a dawning understanding. The guilt he carried, already immense, deepened with the revelation that his actions, however misguided, had been part of an even larger, more ancient conspiracy that had targeted Evelyn for reasons beyond his immediate understanding. "This is monstrous," he murmured, his voice hoarse. "My grandfather, his generation, they would have known. They would have used that information." Evelyn, she was fighting a battle she didn't even fully comprehend, a battle spanning centuries. And I was an unwitting pawn in their game. His self-loathing was palpable. "Then we make it right, Grayson," Ava stated, her voice filled with a fierce determination. "Not just for Evelyn, but for Isabel. For every life trampled by your family's obsession with power and secrecy. We find Evelyn. And if we can't, we honor her memory by exposing the full truth, not just parts of it. We make sure this dark legacy ends, truly ends, here and now." Grayson nodded, his resolve hardening, a new purpose igniting in his eyes. He would use every resource, every connection, every bit of his immense wealth and influence, not just to atone for his own sins, but to dismantle the very system of secrecy and corruption that had plagued his family for generations. His empire, built on shadows, would become a force for absolute transparency. They worked tirelessly, Ava and Marcus focusing on Evelyn's disappearance, Grayson leveraging his network to expose the deeper historical ties between the Blackwell and Vance families, uncovering decades of hidden financial dealings, shell corporations, and orchestrated silences. The truth, when it finally emerged, was a tangled web of greed, power, and ancient secrets, far more expansive than anyone could have imagined. The investigation led them to an isolated, almost cult-like commune in the remote wilderness, a place where individuals seeking to escape the modern world found refuge under a charismatic, manipulative leader. Evelyn, broken and disillusioned after her career was destroyed, had indeed vanished into this hidden society, seeking anonymity and a complete severance from her past. The rescue was complex, delicate, requiring careful negotiation and strategic intervention. Ava, using her nursing skills and compassionate approach, was instrumental in gaining trust within the commune, eventually reaching Evelyn. She found Evelyn, older, scarred, but alive, her spirit dull but not entirely extinguished. Ava brought her back, not just to civilization, but to a chance at healing and a new beginning. The reunion between Evelyn and Grayson was fraught with tension. Years of pain and betrayal hanging heavy in the air. Evelyn, hardened by her experiences, initially rejected his apologies, his desperate attempts at restitution. But Ava, with her innate ability to bridge divides, facilitated their difficult conversations, urging Evelyn to see the man Grayson had become, the genuine remorse that consumed him, the lengths to which he had gone to make amends. Slowly, painstakingly, a fragile peace began to emerge. Evelyn, seeing Grayson's genuine efforts, his complete dismantling of the corrupt aspects of his family's legacy, his unwavering commitment to justice, began to soften. She accepted his apologies, not with immediate forgiveness, but with a cautious hope for true atonement. She even agreed to work with the restructured Blackwell Foundation, using her journalistic skills to expose corporate malfeasance and advocate for social justice, transforming her personal tragedy into a powerful force for good. As the year of their contract drew to a close, the thought of their impending divorce, once a distant relief, now filled Ava with a profound ache. Their marriage, born of desperation, had evolved into something real, something deep and resonant. She had fallen in love with the complex, wounded man behind the billionaire mask, a love born not of convenience, but of shared vulnerability, unexpected understanding, and a mutual quest for redemption. One evening, a few days before the contract expired, Grayson found her in the library, looking at the carved hummingbird he had given her. "Ava," he said, his voice soft, hesitant. "The contract ends in 3 days." She turned, her heart aching. "I know." He walked towards her, his eyes, no longer icy, but warm and vulnerable, searching hers. "When we started this, it was a transaction, a desperate bargain. But it became more. You showed me how to live again, how to feel, how to heal. You showed me that I wasn't destined to be forever alone in my darkness. You made this fortress a home, Ava. You claimed my heart." He reached out, gently taking her hand, his thumb stroking her knuckles. "I don't want to let you go. I want this marriage to be real. I want to build a life with you, a life of truth, of purpose, of shared happiness. Not just for a year, but forever. Will you? Will you stay?" Tears welled in Ava's eyes, tears not of sorrow, but of overwhelming joy and profound relief. She saw the raw honesty in his gaze, the love that shone brightly in the depths of his blue eyes. He wasn't the cold, calculating billionaire anymore. He was Grayson, her Grayson, a man redeemed, a man she loved fiercely. "Yes," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "Yes, Grayson. 1,000 times yes." He pulled her into his arms, holding her close, a tender, loving embrace that spoke volumes. The contract, the past, the pain, all faded into the background, eclipsed by the promise of a future built on genuine dana, love, mutual respect, and a shared commitment to healing the wounds of the past. Lily, fully recovered and thriving, returned from Switzerland a few months later. She found her sister not just alive and well, but truly happy, surrounded by a love that was palpable. She easily bonded with Grayson, drawn to his quiet strength and the subtle warmth he now radiated. The penthouse, once a cold monument to solitude, was now filled with laughter, with life, with the vibrant energy of a family finally whole. The declaration of love, so raw and unexpected, hung in the air between Ava and Grayson, a fragile promise in the opulent library. Ava's yes, was not just an affirmation of her feelings for him, but a deeper commitment to the complex, often messy path they were forging together. The contract, a mere piece of paper, had faded into insignificance, replaced by a profound, unspoken vow that transcended legalities. As Grayson held her, his embrace firm and real, Ava felt a quiet certainty settle within her. This wasn't the fairy tale she might have once dreamed of, but it was something far more resilient. A love forged in adversity, tempered by truth, and built on an honest understanding of each other's flaws and strengths. Their first days as a truly committed couple were marked by a tender awkwardness, a careful dance around the boundaries they had meticulously maintained for so long. The separate wings of the penthouse felt suddenly isolating, but old habits died hard. Yet, there were new rituals, shared breakfasts on the sun-drenched terrace, where Ava would tease Grayson about his overly serious news consumption, and he would watch her with a quiet, appreciative gaze. Evening walks in the sprawling gardens, where their hands would instinctively seek each other out, their fingers intertwining in a silent promise. These moments, small yet profound, solidified their connection, weaving the threads of their individual lives into a stronger, more vibrant tapestry. Grayson, once a man of rigid schedules and impenetrable solitude, found himself increasingly drawn to Ava's warmth, her unpretentious nature. He discovered a lightness in her presence that slowly began to dissipate the heavy cloak of his past. He would often seek her out in the evenings, not for business, but simply to talk, to share his thoughts, to listen to hers. He found himself confiding details he had never shared with anyone, speaking of the immense pressure of his empire, the loneliness of his youth, the constant burden of expectation that had always weighed on him. Ava, in turn, shared stories of her patience, the small victories and heartbreaks of her nursing career, the simple joys of everyday life that had once felt so distant to him. She brought a grounding presence to his high-flying, often isolating world, reminding him of the tangible, human connections that truly mattered. The lingering shadow of Evelyn Thorne, however, still loomed. While Evelyn was safe and on her path to recovery, the full truth of the interconnected deception, the intertwining of the Blackwell and Vance families' dark pasts, had yet to be fully exposed to the world. Grayson, driven by a fierce new sense of purpose, was determined to dismantle the systemic corruption that had enabled his family's, and indeed the Vance family's, historical abuses. This wasn't just about clearing his own conscience. It was about ensuring that no other life would be destroyed in the name of familial legacy or corporate greed. Their strategy was meticulous. Grayson, with Ava and Marcus by his side, began to methodically audit every aspect of the Blackwell Group's historical dealings. They brought in external, independent forensic accountants and legal experts, ensuring that every financial transaction, every land acquisition, every investment, no matter how old, was rigorously scrutinized. It was a painstaking process, unearthing decades of carefully hidden paper trails, shell corporations, and offshore accounts. The deeper they dug, the more intricate and insidious the web of deceit became, revealing not just isolated incidents, but a systemic pattern of exploitation and cover-ups designed to protect the family name, maximize profit at any human cost. One particularly damning discovery involved a series of antiquated trusts established by Grayson's great-grandfather, secretly managed by a shadowy arm of the Vance family's legal network. These trusts had been used to launder profits from illegal mining operations in South America and to silence whistleblowers who threatened to expose the environmental devastation and exploitative labor practices. The details were horrifying, painting a picture of calculated cruelty that far surpassed even Grayson's prior understanding of his family's historical wrongdoings. "This is worse than I ever imagined," Grayson murmured one late night, poring over complex financial ledgers in his study, his face etched with disgust. Ava sat beside him, offering silent support, a hand resting gently on his shoulder. My family, they built an empire on blood and lies. Evelyn wasn't just a threat to my grandfather's image. She was a threat to a criminal enterprise, generations in the making. They weren't just protecting a reputation, they were protecting a vast, ill-gotten fortune." End quote. Ava squeezed his shoulder. "Which is why what you're doing now is so vital, Grayson. You're not just exposing the truth, you're actively dismantling a system of corruption. You're choosing a different legacy." The ethical dilemmas were immense. Exposing the full scope of the past would not only shatter the reputations of the deceased ancestors, but also irrevocably tarnish the living members of both the Blackwell and Vance families who, though perhaps not directly involved in the historical crimes, still benefited from the tainted wealth and bore the family name. Grayson wrestled with this, the weight of public condemnation a heavy burden. But Ava reminded him of Evelyn, of Isabel, of Lily, the innocent lives that had been sacrificed for these very secrets. The moral imperative, she argued, outweighed the desire to protect a name built on such a foundation. "This isn't about punishment, Grayson," Ava had told him, her eyes resolute. "It's about truth and transparency. It's about breaking the cycle. Only by acknowledging the darkness can you truly step into the light and build something genuinely good." Their decision to go public with the complete, unvarnished truth was not made lightly. Grayson held a series of unprecedented press conferences, meticulously organized and strategically timed, where he, alongside Marcus Thorne and a team of ethical lawyers, unveiled the full extent of the Blackwell and Vance families' historical malfeasance. The revelations sent shockwaves through the global financial and social elite. Headlines screamed of "Billionaire Dynasty, Built on Blood Money," and "Ancient Families, Dark Secrets Exposed." The public reaction was a mixture of outrage, disbelief, and a morbid fascination. The fallout was immediate and severe. The Vance family, already reeling from Arthur Vance's arrest, faced further public condemnation and legal challenges. Their remaining assets were frozen, their reputation utterly destroyed. The Blackwell name, though partially redeemed by Grayson's transparency and his active efforts at rectification, still bore the stain of its origins, requiring immense effort and consistent ethical practices to truly rebuild public trust. Grayson faced immense personal attacks, accused by some of betraying his family, of being a publicity-seeking opportunist. But he stood firm, his resolve unwavering, fortified by Ava's unyielding support. "Let them talk," Ava would say, her hand in his. "What truly matters is that you're doing the right thing. Their opinions don't define your integrity." Meanwhile, Evelyn Thorne's recovery was a slow, arduous process. The years spent in isolation, the psychological scars of betrayal and disillusionment, had left deep marks. Ava, drawing on her nursing expertise and deep empathy, spent countless hours with Evelyn, helping her navigate the complexities of reintegrating into society, guiding her through therapy, and simply offering a listening ear. Evelyn was cautious, guarded, but gradually, Ava's genuine compassion began to chip away at her cynicism. Evelyn, once a victim, found a new purpose in the restructured Blackwell Foundation. Grayson, in a powerful act of genuine atonement, offered her a significant leadership role, allowing her to shape its core mission. Evelyn, leveraging her sharp journalistic instincts and fierce sense of justice, transformed the foundation into a global powerhouse for ethical business practices, investigative journalism, and human rights advocacy. She launched initiatives focused on exposing modern-day corporate exploitation, funding independent media outlets, and providing legal aid to whistleblowers. It was her form of redemption, a way to reclaim her narrative and channel her pain into meaningful change. One afternoon, Ava found Evelyn in the Foundation's bustling new offices, poring over documents, her eyes sharp, her posture radiating a quiet power. "You've built something extraordinary here, Evelyn," Ava observed, genuinely impressed. Evelyn looked up, a rare, genuine smile gracing her lips. I couldn't have done it without you, Ava. You brought me back. And Grayson, he gave me a canvas to paint a new future. It's still hard some days. The memories, the anger. But this work, it gives it meaning. It ensures my story, and Isabel's, aren't just tragedies, but catalysts for change. She paused, her gaze softening. And seeing you two truly happy, it helps. It truly does. Lily's return from Switzerland was a joyous, emotional affair. She bounced into the penthouse, no longer frail, but full of vibrant energy, her laughter echoing through the previously quiet halls. She immediately embraced Ava, then, with an innocent openness that bypassed all pretenses, wrapped her arms around Grayson's legs. "Grayson, you made me better," she exclaimed, her eyes shining. Grayson knelt, his usually reserved demeanor melting into a tender smile. "No, Lilybug," he corrected gently, using the nickname Ava often used. "Your sister saved you. I just helped." Lily, however, was resolute. "But you're my hero too. And you make Ava happy. That's very important." She looked between them, her small face filled with a wisdom beyond her years. Her unshakable belief in their genuine connection solidified something profound within both Ava and Grayson. Lily, the catalyst for their initial, transactional union, was now the joyful heart of their true family. The penthouse, once a stark monument to Grayson's solitude, transformed into a vibrant home. Lily's art supplies, her colorful drawings, and her playful chatter filled its previously austere spaces. Ava planted a small herb garden on the terrace, its fragrant leaves bringing a touch of nature's wildness into the carefully curated environment. Grayson, who had once found solace only in his work, now found profound peace in the simple domesticity of their lives. He would read to Lily at bedtime, his deep voice softened by affection, and would often join Ava in the kitchen, awkwardly attempting to help with dinner preparations, their laughter filling the quiet evenings. Their relationship wasn't without its challenges. The scars of Grayson's past, particularly the guilt over Evelyn, sometimes resurfaced, manifesting as moments of quiet introspection or a tendency to revert to his guarded nature under stress. Ava, with her nurse's patience and her unwavering love, learned to recognize these moments, offering comfort and reassurance, reminding him of his hard-won redemption. He, in turn, supported her dreams, encouraging her to pursue further education, knowing her passion for healing extended beyond a traditional nursing role. A subtle external conflict emerged in the form of certain long-standing figures within the high society circles, those who found Grayson's public confessions and his ethical crusade disruptive to their own carefully maintained illusions of propriety. They attempted to ostracize them, to spread rumors about Ava's opportunism and Grayson's midlife crisis. But Ava and Grayson, united in their purpose, stood firm. They chose their circle carefully, surrounding themselves with genuine friends and allies, people who admired their courage and integrity rather than their wealth or status. Marcus Thorne remained a steadfast friend, a quiet guardian and advisor, often sharing a knowing look with Ava that acknowledged the incredible journey they had all undertaken. One particularly venomous article, penned by a disgruntled former associate of the Vance family, attempted to discredit Grayson's entire narrative, tainting him as a manipulative villain seeking public sympathy. It twisted facts, dredged up old irrelevant gossip, and subtly threatened to expose more secrets of the Blackwell family. Grayson, seeing the article, felt a familiar wave of cold fury. His first instinct was to retaliate, to use his immense resources to crush the writer and the publication. But Ava, her hand gently on his arm, stopped him. "Grayson," she said, her voice calm and reasoned. "We don't fight fire with fire, we fight it with light. You've done the work, you've told the truth. Let your actions speak for themselves. This is just noise from someone who doesn't want the old ways to change." And he looked at her, truly seeing her wisdom, her unwavering moral compass. He took a deep breath, letting go of the urge for vengeance. Instead of a furious rebuttal, Grayson released a detailed, transparent report through the Blackwell Foundation, outlining all of their ethical restructuring, highlighting their charitable initiatives, and providing irrefutable evidence of the positive impact they were making globally. He met the malice not with anger, but with accountability and unwavering commitment to ethical change. The public, tired of sensationalism, responded positively to his measured response, further solidifying his reformed image and marginalizing the bitter voices of his detractors. As months turned into their second year of marriage, the past, while not forgotten, became less of a haunting shadow and more of a profound lesson. Grayson had truly transformed. The cold, calculating billionaire was now a compassionate, principled leader, using his power for good. He was still incredibly astute in business, but his decisions were now guided by a deep ethical framework, a profound understanding of the human cost of unchecked ambition. Their love deepened with each passing day, a quiet, abiding force that anchored them. Ava, who had once agreed to a transactional marriage out of desperation, now found herself profoundly, irrevocably in love with the man who had claimed her heart. She was no longer just his wife in name. She was his confidant, his partner, his moral compass. One evening, as Lily slept soundly and the city lights twinkled outside their penthouse window, Ava found Grayson in the library, not with a book on tragic poetry, but with a new photo album. It was filled with pictures of them, of Lily laughing, of Ava gardening, of the three of them on a recent family trip, their smiles genuine, unforced. He had even included a framed photo of the unveiling, the painting of Isabel. But now beneath it was a small, elegant plaque with a single word: justice. "Look at us," Grayson murmured, his arm around her, pulling her close. Who would have thought that a desperate bargain would lead to this? Ava leaned into him, her head resting on his shoulder. Fate, I suppose, and a very wise little girl who saw a truth no one else did. She looked at the photos, at their new life, vibrant and full of purpose, and a man who was brave enough to face his demons and choose a different path. He kissed the top of her head, a gesture filled with profound love and gratitude. "You were my light, Ava. You always were. You showed me that even after the darkest storms, there can be a dawn." Their journey was a testament to the extraordinary power of resilience, the profound capacity for human connection, and the unexpected, transformative nature of love. A marriage born of cold desperation had blossomed into a true partnership, built on shared purpose, unwavering trust, and a love that had defied all expectations, proving that even in the most unlikely of circumstances, a broken heart could heal, and a life once lost could find its true, beautiful destiny. The billionaire stranger, once defined by his past, was now defined by the boundless love he shared with the woman who had saved his sister, claimed his heart, and illuminated his world.